Pope Pius XI, born Ambrogio Damiano Asciel-Ratti, reigned from 6 February 1922 to his death in 1939. He was the first sovereign of Vatican City from its creation as an independent state on the 11th of February 1929. He took as his papal motto, Pax Christi in Regno Christi, translated, the peace of Christ in the kingdom of Christ. Pius XI issued numerous encyclicals, including Quadragesimo Anno on the 40th anniversary of Pope Leo XIII's groundbreaking social encyclical Rerum Novarum, highlighting the capitalistic greed of international finance and social justice issues, and Quaes Primus, establishing the Feast of Christ the King. The encyclical Studiorum Ducem, promulgated 29 June 1923, was written on the occasion of the 6th centenary of the canonization of Thomas Aquinas, whose thought is acclaimed as central to Catholic philosophy and theology. The encyclical also singles out the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, Angelicum as the preeminent institution for the teaching of Aquinas. Ante omnia pontificium collegium angelicum, ubi homum tamquam domi suae habiter dixeris. To establish or maintain the position of the Catholic Church, he concluded a record number of concordats, including the Reichskonkordat with Germany. During his pontificate, the long-standing hostility with the Italian government over the status of the papacy and the Church in Italy was successfully resolved in the Lateran Treaty of 1929. He was unable to stop the persecution of the Church and the killing of clergy in Mexico, Spain and the Soviet Union. He canonized important saints, including Thomas More, Petrus Canisius, Conrad von Parzum, Andrew Bobbila and Don Bosco. He beatified and canonized Thérèse de Lisieux, for whom he held special reverence, and gave equivalent canonization to Albertus Magnus, naming him a doctor of the Church due to the spiritual power of his writings. Pius XI created the Feast of Christ the King in response to anti-clericalism. He took a strong interest in fostering the participation of lay people throughout the Catholic Church, especially in the Catholic Action Movement. The end of his pontificate was dominated by speaking out against Hitler and Mussolini and defending the Catholic Church from intrusions into Catholic life and education. He died on 10 February 1939 in the Apostolic Palace and is buried in the Papal Grotto of St. Peter's Basilica. In the course of excavating space for his tomb, 2 levels of burial grounds were uncovered which revealed bones now venerated as the bones of St. Peter. Early life and career. Asciel-Ratti was born in Desio, in the province of Milan, in 1857, the son of an owner of a silk factory. He was ordained a priest in 1879 and embarked on an academic career within the Church. He obtained 3 doctorates at the Gregorian University in Rome, and then from 1882 to 1888 was a professor at the seminary in Padua. His scholarly specialty was as an expert paleographer, a student of ancient and medieval church manuscripts. Eventually, he left seminary teaching to work full-time at the Ambrosian Library in Milan, from 1888 to 1911. During this time, he edited and published an edition of the Ambrosian Missal, and researched and wrote much on the life and works of St. Charles Borromeo. He became chief of the library in 1907 and undertook a thorough program of restoration and reclassification of the Ambrosians' collection. He was also an avid mountaineer in his spare time, reaching the summits of Monte Rosa, the Matterhorn, Mont Blanc and Presolana. The combination of a scholar-athlete pope would not be seen again until the pontificate of John Paul II. In 1911, at Pope Pius X's invitation, he moved to the Vatican to become vice-prefect of the Vatican Library, and in 1914 was promoted to prefect. Nuncio to Poland on expulsion in 1918, Pope Benedict XV asked him to change careers and take a diplomatic post. apostolic visitor in Poland, a state newly restored to existence, but still under effective German and Austro-Hungarian control. In October 1918, Benedict was the first head of state to congratulate the Polish people on the occasion of the restoration of their independence. In March 1919, he nominated 10 new bishops and, soon after, upgraded Ratti's position in Warsaw to the official position of papal nuncio. Ratti was consecrated as a titular archbishop in October 1919. Benedict XV and Nuncio Ratti repeatedly cautioned Polish authorities against persecuting the Lithuanian and Ruthenian clergy. During the Bolshevik advance against Warsaw, the Pope asked for worldwide public prayers for Poland, while Ratti was the only foreign diplomat who refused to flee Warsaw when the Red Army was approaching the city in August 1920. On the 11th of June 1921, Benedict XV asked Ratti to deliver his message to the Polish episcopate, warning against political misuses of spiritual power, urging again peaceful coexistence with neighboring people, stating that love of country has its limits in justice and obligations. Ratti intended to work for Poland by building bridges to men of goodwill in the Soviet Union, even to shedding his blood for Russia. Benedict, however, needed Ratti as a diplomat, not as a martyr, and forbade his traveling into the USSR despite his being the official papal delegate for Russia. The nuncio's continued contacts with Russians did not generate much sympathy for him within Poland at the time. After Pope Benedict sent Ratti to Silesia to forestall potential political agitation within the Polish Catholic clergy, the nuncio was asked to leave Poland. On the 20th of November, when German Cardinal Adolf Bertram announced a papal ban on all political activities of clergymen, calls for Ratti's expulsion climaxed. Ratti was asked to leave. While he tried honestly to show himself as a friend of Poland, Warsaw forced his departure. After his neutrality in Silesian voting was questioned by Germans and Poles, nationalistic Germans objected to the Polish nuncio supervising local elections, and patriotic Poles were upset because he curtailed political action among the clergy. Elevation to the papacy. In the consistory of 3 June 1921, Pope Benedict XV created 3 new cardinals, including Achille Ratti, who was appointed Archbishop of Milan simultaneously. The Pope joked with them, saying, "Well, today I gave you the red hat, but soon it will be white for one of you." After the Vatican celebration, Ratti went to the Benedictine monastery at Monte Cassino for a retreat to prepare spiritually for his new role. He accompanied Milanese pilgrims to Lourdes in August 1921. Ratti received a tumultuous welcome on a visit to his hometown Desio, and was enthroned in Milan on 8 September. On the 22nd of January 1922, Pope Benedict XV died unexpectedly of pneumonia. At the conclave to choose a new pope, which proved to be the longest of the 20th century, the College of Cardinals was divided into 2 factions. One led by Raphael Merri del Val favoring the policies and style of Pope Pius X, and the other favoring those of Pope Benedict XV led by Pietro Gasparri. Gasparri approached Ratti before voting began on the 3rd day and told him he would urge his supporters to switch their votes to Ratti, who was shocked to hear this. When it became clear that neither Gasparri nor Del Val could win, the cardinals approached Ratti, thinking him a compromise candidate not identified with either faction. Cardinal Gaetano Della approached Ratti and was believed to have said, "We will vote for your eminence if your eminence will promise that you will not choose Cardinal Gasparri as your Secretary of State." Ratti is said to have responded, "I hope and pray that among so highly deserving cardinals the Holy Spirit selects someone else. If I am chosen, it is indeed Cardinal Gasparri whom I will take to be my Secretary of State." Ratti was elected pope on the conclave's 14th ballot on 6 February 1922 and took the name of Pius XI. explaining that Pius IX was the Pope of his youth and Pius X had appointed him head of the Vatican Library. It was rumored that immediately after the election, he decided to appoint Pietro Gasparri as his Cardinal Secretary of State. As his first act as Pope, he revived the traditional public blessing from the balcony, Urbi et Orbi, abandoned by his predecessors since the loss of Rome to the Italian state in 1870. This suggested his openness to a rapprochement with the government of Italy. Public teaching. The Peace of Christ in the Reign of Christ. Pius XI's first encyclical as Pope was directly related to his aim of Christianizing all aspects of increasingly secular societies. Ubi Arcano, promulgated in December 1922, inaugurated the Catholic Action movement. Similar goals were in evidence in two encyclicals of 1929 and 1930. Divine Aurelius Magistri made clear the need for Christian over secular education. Casticum Ubi praised Christian marriage and family life as the basis for any good society. It condemned artificial means of contraception, but acknowledged the unitive aspect of intercourse. Any use whatsoever of matrimony exercised in such a way that the act is deliberately frustrated in its natural power to generate life is an offense against the law of God and of nature, and those who indulge in such are branded with the guilt of a grave sin. Nor are those considered as acting against nature who in the married state use their right in the proper manner, although on account of natural reasons either of time or of certain defects. New life cannot be brought forth, for in matrimony as well as in the use of the matrimonial rites there are also secondary ends, such as mutual aid, the cultivating of mutual love, and the quieting of concupiscence, which husband and wife are not forbidden to consider so long as they are subordinated to the primary end and so long as the intrinsic nature of the act is preserved. Political teachings in contrast to some of his predecessors in the 19th century who had favored monarchy and dismissed democracy. Pius XI took a pragmatic approach toward the different forms of government. In his encyclical De Lectissima Nobis, in which he addressed the situation of the Church in Republican Spain, he proclaimed, universally known is the fact that the Catholic Church is never bound to one form of government more than to another. Provided the divine rights of God and of Christian consciences are safe, she does not find any difficulty in adapting herself to various civil institutions, be they monarchic or republican, aristocratic or democratic. Social teachings. Pius XI argued for a reconstruction of economic and political life on the basis of religious values. Quadragesimo Anno was written to mark 40 years since Pope Leo XIII's encyclical Rerum Novarum, and restated that encyclical's warnings against both socialism and unrestrained capitalism, as enemies to human freedom and dignity. Pius XI instead envisioned an economy based on cooperation and solidarity. In Quadragesimo Anno, he stated that social and economic issues are vital to the Church not from a technical point of view but in terms of moral and ethical issues involved. Ethical considerations include the nature of private property in terms of its functions for society and the development of the individual. He defined fair wages and branded the exploitation both materially and spiritually by international capitalism. Private property. The Church has a role in discussing the issues related to the social order. Social and economic issues are vital to her not from a technical point of view but in terms of moral and ethical issues involved. Ethical considerations include the nature of private property. Within the Catholic Church several conflicting views had developed. Pope Pius XI declares private property essential for the development and freedom of the individual. Those who deny private property deny personal freedom and development. But, said Pius, private property has a social function as well. Private property loses its morality if it is not subordinated to the common good. Therefore, governments have a right to redistribution policies. In extreme cases, the Pope grants the state a right of expropriation of private property. Capital and labor. A related issue, said Pius, is the relation between capital and labor and the determination of fair wages. Pius develops the following ethical mandate. The Church considers it a perversion of industrial society to have developed sharp opposite camps based on income. He welcomes all attempts to alleviate these differences. 3 elements determine a fair wage: the worker's family, the economic condition of the enterprise, and the economy as a whole. The family has an innate right to development, but this is only possible within the framework of a functioning economy and a sound enterprise. Thus, Pius concludes that cooperation and not conflict is a necessary condition, given the mutual interdependence of the parties involved. Social order. Pius XI believed that industrialization results in less freedom at the individual and communal level, because numerous free social entities get absorbed by larger ones. The society of individuals becomes the mass-class society. People are much more interdependent than in ancient times, and become egoistic or class-conscious in order to save some freedom for themselves. The Pope demands more solidarity, especially between employers and employees, through new forms of cooperation and communication. Pius displays a negative view of capitalism, especially of the anonymous international finance markets. He identifies certain dangers for small and medium-sized enterprises, which have insufficient access to capital markets and are squeezed or destroyed by the larger ones. He warns that capitalist interests can become a danger for nations, which could be reduced to chained slaves of individual interests. Pius XI was the first pope to utilize the power of modern communications technology in evangelizing the wider world. He established Vatican Radio in 1931, and he was the first pope to broadcast on radio. Internal church affairs and ecumenism. In his management of the Church's internal affairs, Pius XI mostly continued the policies of his predecessor. Like Benedict XV, he emphasized spreading Catholicism in Africa and Asia and on the training of native clergy in those mission territories. He ordered every religious order to devote some of its personnel and resources to missionary work. Pius XI continued the approach of Benedict XV on the issue of how to deal with the threat of modernism in Catholic theology. The Pope was thoroughly orthodox theologically and had no sympathy with modernist ideas that relativized fundamental Catholic teachings. He condemned modernism in his writings and addresses. However, his opposition to modernist theology was by no means a rejection of new scholarship within the Church, as long as it was developed within the framework of orthodoxy and compatible with the Church's teachings. Pius XI was interested in supporting serious scientific study within the Church, establishing the Pontifical Academy of the Sciences in 1936. Pius XI strongly encouraged devotion to the Sacred Heart in his encyclical Miserentissimus Redemptor. He canonized some important saints: Bernadette Soubirous, Therese of Lisieux, John Vianney, John Fisher, Thomas More and John Bosco. He also named several new doctors of the Church: John of the Cross, Albert the Great, Peter Canisius and Robert Bellarmine. Pius XI was the first pope to directly address the Christian ecumenical movement. Like Benedict XV, he was interested in achieving reunion with the Eastern Orthodox. However, these enterprises were firmly aimed at actually reuniting with the Roman Catholic Church other Christians who basically agreed with Catholic doctrine, bringing them back under papal authority. To the broad pan-Protestant ecumenical movement he took a more negative attitude. He condemned, in his 1928 encyclical, Mortalia Manimos, the idea that Christian unity could be attained by establishing a broad federation of many bodies holding varying doctrines. Rather, the Catholic Church was the one true church, all her teachings were objectively true, and Christian unity could only be achieved by non-Catholic denominations rejoining the Catholic Church and accepting the doctrines they had rejected.